With that, we bring in Greg Olsen, just terrific, Fox Sports NFL analyst, Pro Bowler, 14 years. You know, this is something I talked about earlier, that it's a lot of psychology, but, you know, Andy Reid, he's got the bag, he's got the legacy, he's got the quarterback, and we're getting to a point, I hear it with Lamar Jackson, though I don't buy the narrative. Lamar's never going to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, settle down. Kyle and Lamar are both going to end up doing very well in their careers. But it is interesting. When you go into a game, Greg, and you're going up against Mahomes, I've watched coaches go for it on fourth downs they shouldn't, make decisions they shouldn't do. I feel like there's a Mahomes effect in these big games. Now, it may not exist this year, but what do you make of that? Going into a game with Brock, facing the greatest quarterback, can that get into your head, do you think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the reality is I think that's the case for a lot of teams, right? I think you go back to the NFC Championship game that we called. The reason Dan Campbell made those decisions to go on fourth down is because he's chasing 30-plus points, right? He knows this San Francisco offense is better than his Detroit defense, and he knows if they end with a field goal or a punt, they're not going to get to 30, right? So they got 31 and they lost. So the same thing with Mahomes, but that was true in years past. I think now, though, and I just listened to your prediction, and I think you're spot on about Kansas City. This is a defensive story for Kansas City. I mean, they scored 17 points in the AFC Championship and moved on to the Super Bowl. 3-4 years ago, if Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid scored 17 points, their season would have been over, right? So Steve Spagnuolo, this young defense, they're aggressive. You mentioned Chris Jones, but they got some dudes on the back end that they invested in last year that were rookies on that Super Bowl run. So this is a unique animal. So I don't think you have to be careful. I don't think you can play this like it's the Kansas City offense of years ago where you're chasing 30 points. That's not who they've been this year. I think your low 20s score is, I think that's right. So I don't think Kyle has to go crazy. I don't think Purdy needs to throw the ball 50 times, run the ball at him, be physical, that play under center, play action pass, get back to just, that's the fundamental philosophy of this Shanahan offense and what's made it so good. And I think this style of game with Kansas City's offense not being that highly prolific, high scoring that they've been in years past doesn't make you play out of character.
You know, every offensive coach, I think, has a bit of an advantage off a bye or extra time. But Andy's record off a bye is, like, historically insane. And I think some of it, in my opinion, comes because Shanahan's offense, there's a lot of repetition. It's the same play in 12 sets. But it's about a half dozen plays that keep going and going. So my argument would be, well, is time as big an advantage? With Andy, he'll bring in trick plays. He'll design new stuff. I mean, he's really an artist at this stuff. I mean, he literally will bring things into this game, and you're like, I mean, last year he's got Sky Moore wide open for touchdowns. I do think Andy does feel different off a bye. That's my take, is that he's not just another offensive coach. I think he's the best coach with extra time I've ever seen in my life. What is your observation of Andy?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think, listen, to weather what Kansas City has been able to do over the last couple of years is they recognized, okay, we need to look at how we're going to build this team, and we need to get some young assets. We're paying our quarterback $1 bazillion, and he's going to have to do with less, right? That's just the nature of today's NFL. If you're paying your $50+ million quarterback, you can build on this young defense, and you can weather those young teams. And when you look at last year, if you don't have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes or the equivalent of, you're not winning the Super Bowl, you're not getting to the Super Bowl, let alone winning it, with 1 million young rookies and young defensive backs where you're starting 3, first and second year guys in the back end, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the Super Bowl, and what was supposed to be a rebuild year, you're Super Bowl champions. You're only doing that if you are elite at the 2 spots that matter the most in pro football, head coach and quarterback. And you can make the argument, I mean, since Brady and Belichick, this is the best combination that we've seen. I mean, ever is a strong word, but in recent memory at least. And, I think you're right. I think certain coaches, the bye week, I think there is an advantage, which both of these guys have, is they know what the Super Bowl prep looks like. They know how much work should be done at home before they fly out to the Super Bowl site and get into the rigmarole. So I think from an advantage standpoint, I think Andy obviously has been there a bunch. So has Kyle. So I think the prep going into a Super Bowl is unlike anything else the rest of the season. The bye week point, though, you're right. Andy's bye week record, I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's something ridiculous, and that's not by accident.
Okay, as a great tight end, we have two Hall of Fame level tight ends. Some similarities, both willing to block. Kittle is kind of a junkyard dog to me. He's just banging around and loves contact. Kelce's a little bit more clever at times, but again, a willing blocker. When you look at them, if I'd never seen them play, let's start with Travis Kelce. And I'd say, hey, Greg, give me a rundown. I'm a defensive coordinator. What am I going to see with Travis Kelce?
Well, you're going to see a guy that regardless of what routes you had the scout team run all week and regardless of which guy wore the 87 jersey and you pointed him out in every formation and you knew on every third down where the ball was going to go, that route he's going to run on Sunday is not going to look like it looked in the week of practice. And right. I think that's the beauty and the magic is his feel, his creativity, his ability to just play free and understand, okay, I know where the rest of my teammates are going to be. I know the general area of where Pat wants me to be. But for the quarterback and the receiver to not have to do it, we always say we don't run routes like it's on a piece of paper. Right? You don't just run 12 yards and break out and hope I'm open. No, you get yourself open in the NFL. You're not reliant on always the play call. It's not always the perfect route against the perfect coverage. That sums up Travis Kelce maybe better than any tight end in history in the NFL. I mean, his ability to be creative and find space in man and zone, create separation in man, and then a quarterback that trusts him, a play caller in Andy Reid that trusts him to have that flexibility. You got to earn that over a long time of being productive. And, I never thought anyone would catch Tony. If Travis plays long enough, he could catch Gonzalez, which years ago seemed unheard of. So it's pretty remarkable. Edelman's coming in to say what's up. And, so it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do. And I think he's the perfect player in the perfect system, and that's where the magic happens.
So Kittle's different. He was a mid-round guy. Kelce wasn't a first-round guy either, but I think Kittle kind of surprised people. His physicality, there's a little Gronk to him, I think. What do you see?
Yeah, I think what's cool about Kittle is, he bust onto the scene a few years back, and I think him and Kelce were going back and forth maybe, and the one of them was beating the other for like the most yards and ever. I want to say Kittle finished like 1,300 yards. And then these last couple years, he wasn't getting necessarily the big production, wasn't a 1,000-yard receiver. But, man, when you watch the tape, you talk about a perfect fit and a perfect offense. If you want to play tight end in Shanahan's offense, you're not just coming on the field to catch third down passes, come in the red zone, run fun. You're cut blocking defensive ends on the backside of zone. You're pass protecting on the deep shots to Debo and Ayuk. You're doing all the dirty work, and then you're also going to be counted on to go for 80, 90 a game and end the season over 1,000. I think that's what's cool about Kittle is, just like you say, Kelce's the perfect fit for Mahomes and Andy Reid and the style of play. Kittle is the exact same fit, but just a different philosophy, right? It's an under-center run game. It's a play-action pass. It's just a very different style of offense. But when you have two guys whose skill sets, whose demeanor, whose football intelligence directly aligns with the play caller and the system that they're asked to play in, to your point, they're two Hall of Fame level guys. They've been doing it. They've been the premier two tight ends, for the last 5 to 10 years. And for them to go up against each other, I just wish I was calling the game, man. These are my two guys. We do TEU together. These are my good buddies. So I'm a little jealous that we're not calling the game, but I'm going to enjoy watching these two guys and cheer from both.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.